All right, and we're live. All right, how's it going, Vincent?
It's going good, Greg. Thank you for having me today.
Absolutely. So you excited? You got a big task ahead of you, running for state rep, 52nd district, man.
Yeah, it's a bit of an uphill battle. It hasn't been done in many years, but look, at this point, as we're going to talk about on this podcast, we really need new voices coming in and we really need to push the ball forward because the status quo isn't working for a lot of people living in our district and living in Connecticut and geez, living in America. I don't know if you've seen gas prices recently, but it's a nightmare. And I think we really do need change and I hope to play at least a small role in pushing that ball forward.
So what do you think? Like, how do you start with that with this district? One of the things, obviously, it's like it's tough, man. Like you're a young guy and you're running as a Democrat in a pretty conservative district. So how do you kind of bridge that gap? Like how do you appeal to the conservative voters, people that are like more traditionally that way? I mean, there's a huge I think more than anything, like people are independent in this district, but how do you do this as a Democrat?
Look, I really think you hit the nail on the head here. It's a lot of independent voters, and I think you got to understand with the makeup of what their district is. It's a lot of working class people. It's people who really are not super ideological. They care about what's happening to them, to their communities, particularly on an economic level. And
Mhm.
that's something that both Democrats and Republicans should be doing. It's something that they're not doing a really great job with right now because really with all these communities what they really want is they want to live a life where they can live in their homes, stay in their homes, grow old in their homes, buy groceries, buy gas, and not have to feel financially strained every time they do that and feel like there's just I think we're going to hear over and over again what we're doing right now is just unsustainable for a lot of people living here. And
Yeah.
if we don't do anything about it right now, our district is going to look vastly different because the people living here now will just be unable to afford to live here.
Yeah, I mean that's a big thing right now with the district. I mean everyone's talking about affordability issues and what have you. Um, like how do we attack that? How do we make people that are afraid to spend a little bit more on things like believe in the idea of spending a little bit more, say even on taxes, if it means like getting some relief for the district.
Yeah, and I mean, let's be completely clear here. The tax burden, if there is any tax burden, should not be falling on the residents in this district. We pay a very large amount of income tax to the state. I believe the difference between like the average tax bracket that most people pay, which is a little under 100K per family household, is about 1% difference than the highest tax bracket, which for me doesn't even make sense. And the cutoff is ridiculous. So let's start off the bat that like nobody's taxes need to be raised in this hour. In fact, it should be lowered. And that leads me off to kind of the first thing that we need to talk about right here, which is unfunded mandates, especially for small towns. A lot of people are not going to be able to afford to live in the place that they're living because their property taxes are way too high. And what I don't think people really understand is that property taxes are not determined by the state, they're determined by municipalities, which is the towns you live in, and how much they spend on, education, how much they spend on roads, fire, police. Those are all paid for by your property taxes and your vehicle tax. So, what the state is doing right now, and this is particularly hurting our municipalities, these small town municipalities with not a lot of tax base from corporations, is that the state requires that these towns fund different measures without providing any state relief for it. For example, one of the biggest issues that was happening that was kind of fixed, but really not, is special education. So every time a student comes into a school and needs access to different resources, historically it's mostly fall on the towns to flip the bill in terms of that. So every time you get a student who needs special education services, your taxes one to one get raised because of that. So what I'm proposing, what I'm really running on in the first place, is that we need the state to fund their unfunded mandates on these towns and municipalities, and that's going to save voters hundreds of dollars. depending on their property, and it's going to really lower things. And Woodstock, for instance, we in essence the last budget session, we're in essence started paying more for less. During that budget fight, the taxes were raised, property tax, vehicle taxes were raised, and what ended up happening? The school repairs got pushed off another year, another year. This happened in the past, and fire the fire department was put on the chopping block. If we failed one more vote, we would have had to cut the budget of the fire department. And as someone who's volunteered at the fire department for a good while, like, I think everyone here understands how important those individuals are to the community. But if we're paying more taxes and we're not seeing any benefit to those more taxes, it's gonna be a big issue. So one of the big things I'm pushing for is the state needs to fund unfunded mandates, and also I'm pushing for is that the representative that represents this district, we need more grant funding. We need more access to grant funding so that a lot of the burden falls away from property taxes and more taking away from the state funding, which is running at a surplus. So that doesn't require any new taxes at all.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's with Stafford, that's one of the things that we've kind of got into over the last budget process. It was a flat budget that nothing was really increased and what have you. We had to rely a lot on grant funding, which I think it is a good thing. I mean, people are pinched right now; things are hard, um, but that's only sustainable for so long too. But the idea, like we had an entire sidewalk up at our high school and our school complex put in just by grant funding, and those things are huge. And a lot of people don't even know. A lot of times, don't even know they exist. We're fortunate; we have an unbelievable grant writer in our town, who constantly is going after grants left and right, and she's doing so much to shape the community just through those grants. And it's just one of those things, like people don't even know that they're available because they get so caught up in the fact that they're just trying to worry about their own lives, so they're just focusing on the budget. So I think it's so important to be able to get this information out to people and explain so that they know what's available, so that we're not missing out on opportunities, whether it's just in Stafford or the district as a whole.
No, and I think it's important. We need to shout out Stafford here. You guys got a good thing going here. Bill Morrison is phenomenal individual, phenomenal statesman. And so you guys are doing very well, but particularly for grant writing, because the way the state works and it's town by town. It's there's no I think we're the only state that does municipalities town by town and not by districts. You have Union having to find someone who's able to be as good as Stafford to write these grants. Someone like places like Woodstock, places like Summers. These towns are small, and it's tough. Even when there's grants that are being able to provide, it's really difficult for these towns to really jump through all these hoops to get access to those grants. There's so much red tape involved, and it's a nightmare. And we need, if the state is willing to give funding for grants for all these towns, why do they spend so much time, and why do they do so much to restrict these towns from accessing the funds when this is their idea in the first place? So we really need to make grants have an easier route in order to fund these.
Right. Um, Now, one of the things I was curious about, we had talked about it a little bit, like when we were on the phone with one another. And actually, you know what I'll do? It seems like it's one of those things that goes in the taxes depending on how far it goes. But I thought something interesting came up recently that the governor actually proposed. And I don't agree with him on everything, but this is one of the things that I looked at. I'm like, okay, well, maybe it's a step in the right direction. So I'm going to try actually to share my screen here, and just get your opinion on this. So just bear with me, and let me see if I can do this. Screen. Okay, do you see that?
Yeah, I see it.
Okay, so there we go. So it looks like Governor Lamont is proposing a potential CT option plan for healthcare. Are you familiar with that at all?
Yeah, we talked about it on the phone for a little bit. I've done a little bit of research into it. Yes.
So what are your thoughts? What do you think about it? Do you think that based on what is being proposed, it looks right now like it's just something in regards to just discussing feasibility? Um, do you think that with what it's talking about, it's something that goes far enough, or do you think that there should be some other, feasibility proposals put out there in regards to healthcare?
No, and I think, look, when we look at healthcare, really the devil's in the details.
Yep.
So, look, there needs to be in order for me to really comment on a lot of things, you need to have a specific bill out there laying out the particular cost, because then you can say, okay, this is how much the price is going to go up for taxpayers. This is how much it's going to go up in premiums. And so, look, I think overall a CT option would be a good thing to look into. I know the neighbors in the north kind of have a similar thing going on in Massachusetts, but this
Yeah.
is my philosophy generally on healthcare. It's kind of an interesting thing where the bigger the pie is, the more affordable it is. Which is why my big thing is that, it's good if the state is able to kind of do healthcare piecemeal in terms of like making plans for particular states. But what really needs to happen is it needs to happen at a national level in order for prices to really be reduced, for the tax burden to be reduced, and for generally premiums to not be completely destroying families in terms of cost of living. And now, personally, I think that healthcare is a right, and it should be provided for everybody. And that particularly needs to be a movement that we need to push, particularly on a national level. So I'm excited to see what ends up happening with this. And I know this is a feasibility thing. So if I win in the election, this will probably be one of the biggest and first thing kind of on my plate coming into the legislative session. And I just want to tell my constituents that, look, I'm not going to commit to voting one way or the other. I'm a real diligent individual. I make sure I do my homework on things. I'm not going to vote for something that I know is going to hurt my constituents. And I want to guarantee you that I'll make sure to look long and hard on this bill if it ends up coming across the table and it comes up being feasible. And I'll get input from my community, because look, I really hate when politicians claim they're an expert on everything when they don't really have expertise on anything.
Right.
And so one of the biggest things that I'm really pushing towards is that we need politicians to really be not afraid to reach out to local organizers, local experts, and really get their thoughts. So on a thing like as important as this, that is really going to affect the people living in the district in a very fundamental way, I want to let you know that that's something that I find very important, that I'll make sure I take a good look at.
Yeah, no, and I'll tell you too, man. It's because, like, you mentioned the constituency and just the idea of you know getting out there and being able to talk to them, getting feedback, even like being collaborative with the people in the district. Um, do you have any ideas on like how you might do something like that? Just to make sure you're out there, getting up in front of people, talking to people. Like if you're in there, because it's like I said, it's like, it's a conservative district, and there's going to be a lot of people you're going to need to convince, um, and to make sure that they feel that they can trust somebody that's going to be a member of the majority party, and get in there and actually, be even more of an independent voice. Because that's one of my things personally, for what it's worth, is just trying to be. I think everybody deserves to have their own voice, and I think that that's something that both parties should focus a little bit more on. Is just having more independent voices in the party and getting younger people involved, like you, that can do so. So, what are your thoughts? Getting out there, getting in front of people, and trying to have your own voice within the majority party.
Yeah. So thank you for the question. And I think I'll kind of break this down in a couple tiers because I want to talk about the independents, but I'll talk about more as the real, the real sticks, the real crux of me getting out there. So what I'm doing right now is I'm already cold calling individuals. So I'm sitting down for a couple hours a day, calling people, hearing from people, and that's been excellent. We've had great responses, and I've been really appreciative of a lot of the people I've heard from, who I've had incredible conversations with, and so I'm looking forward to continue doing that. We're gonna start knocking doors on the 20th. I believe got that down. So if you particularly are around Bungie Lake, you're going to be seeing me. I'm going to be knocking on every door there, and we're going to grow outward from there, and just spend the entire time just knocking on doors, getting in front of people. And then also we're looking at a couple other events. I'm hoping to host a like official kickoff event, and kind of near the end of March as well. And so I'm hoping to invite as many people as that, and kind
Well,
of
this is
make it
it.
into a bit of an open town hall as well, so people can
Oh,
come and
cool.
ask
Yeah.
questions and do that. And I'm hoping to do as many town halls as possible, because look, too many politicians are running scared away from their constituency. And look, I think the biggest example of this was I think it was last year, where Republicans just stopped hosting town halls when their constituents started yelling at them last year. And look, it's really easy for a politician to be like, look, I'm just going to appeal to corporate interest, and then have corporate interest bankroll my entire campaign, and I don't have to do anything but spam ads to everybody. But there's still good things that we can be doing, sitting down, going door to door, talking to the people, because they're the people who they're the people who are going to elect me. They're the people who are going to hire me. If we're looking, I mean, you and me come from working class backgrounds. It's important that we understand who's our boss, who are we trying to work for, and who are we trying to improve the lives of. And kind of a muddy transition now into the independent kind of voters and the independent voices. I told the people in Summers, I gave a speech over there in Summers a little bit ago, like, look, I'm running as a Democrat. Look, you're gonna see a D next to my name, but what I'm really is I'm not representing a Democrat. I'm not representing the Democrats. I'm representing 52. That's gonna be
Yes.
my biggest thing, and I'm really appreciative of the way Connecticut has their elections set up, with how the citizens elections program. Like, this is a huge boost to someone like me who doesn't come from money. My dad's a truck driver. My father was a union electrician man. Like, people like me are not supposed to be running, but because
Yeah.
Connecticut has this, I am able to run. And
Yes.
so what this allows me is that I'm allowed to kind of say the things that I truly believe without anyone influencing me that you see everywhere else. And I just want to tell you that even I'm not afraid to say what I want to say. I have beliefs. I'm very transparent about those beliefs, and nobody's going to tell me otherwise what I should believe. And I'm going to make it clear to you, the voters, and if that convinces you, great. I'm very glad. If it doesn't convince you, or you have other ideas, that's great. I want to hear from you. I want to hear from you. I want to hear what your issues are. I want to hear what you think is good, and I want to make your lives better, because that's what a politician should be doing. They shouldn't be in there collecting checks, going and not doing anything. They should be listening to their constituents and being active, energetic, and responsive to what the citizens are saying, because those are the most important people right now.
So if you so you do these town halls, you get elected, and then you get yelled at. How do you deal with that? Now, that's somebody I asked that of somebody, like, I've worked, my career has been in hospitality and hotels and what have you. And I've been on the receiving end of a lot of tirades from people, so it's not easy. And and the fact of the matter is, even in those situations, it's generally about money. But this is even bigger. It's like, so how do you deal with somebody that might not agree with you and what you're trying to do and the thing that you believe in, and when they yell at you and tell you that you're taking their money from them, like, what's the approach with that?
Yeah. So look,
Tough.
I'm a very big proponent of de-escalating situations. I'm not a yeller.
Absolutely.
I
Yeah, absolutely.
like, you work in hospitality. I've I've worked at Dollar General. I've worked in restaurants. Like, this isn't the first time someone who gets annoyed at me will probably yell at me, whether it be my boss or whether it be, the people I'm serving. And I think, from my experience there, the best thing that you can do is you gotta be calm. You gotta meet them where they're at. You don't just dismiss them, or in particularly don't think that you're above them, because that's not the case. That's what a lot of politicians do. You get this, like, how dare you, question my authority, and then you get a Jeff Gordon like 6 paragraph rant on Facebook every time you question one of his bills. But
Yeah, I guess I've I've
but you
never.
know, just to kind of wrap up that thought there, you know, it's like you got to meet people where they're at, and that if someone's yelling, they're yelling probably for a very good reason, because something within them is disgusted with how something is going, whether no matter if it's something that the state's doing or something that I'm doing. And you know, some people just need to own that, and some people need to own that. Look, mistakes mistakes are they happen, and that you need to own those mistakes. And one of my favorite sayings that my mom used to say is, don't cry over spilled milk, which is and don't make a mountain out of a molehill. You need to understand the situation, and if you made a mistake, you made a mistake. How can you fix that mistake? How can you improve after this, and what can you do to improve the situation? And that's kind of my biggest philosophy there.
Um, Now, I mentioned to you when we were getting gearing up for this. I just wanted to make mention of this. So, there was all just trying to still kind of figure out how all this goes and how all this runs. I did have for me, I did have a visitor trying to come up to actually listen to all this. So if it seemed like I was kind of shooing something away, I had some visitors that didn't realize it'd be sitting right in the camera shot. So,
Uh,
if you had noticed that. Yeah. And then also, as well, I wanted to, because we do have in the public chat here as well, I didn't want you to think that I wasn't listening to you because I was getting a text message from my pal Sage, Sage
how are we doing,
McPherson.
Sage?
He's the guy. Yeah, so he's in the comment section. I don't know that we have anyone else here, but I know that Sage, there you go. Hey, Vinny.
Ah,
He's
there
already
he
got a
is.
nickname for you. He's in the comment section. I don't think anyone's there but him, but he might have questions for you too along the way. There you go. He
Yeah, thank
appreciates
you.
you coming,
Appreciate you,
so
Sage.
and I do too, man. So, but anyways, yeah, as I kind of iron out the wrinkles here and me and Sage kind of figure out what all this looks like, yeah, I just wanted to make mention of those two little things. There was something that was on my mind though, now that I've kind of gotten through that. I was curious because something you had mentioned was you had mentioned your dad. And that's something that resonated with me because you had mentioned your dad was in the trades union, was it?
Yeah, both my dad and my stepdad.
Yep. Nice. So my dad, he was a union iron worker. So we both come from those type of families where we had dads, people in our family that did pretty hard work. And right now, I think something that needs a lot of focus, my opinion, is are the trades and like how we focus on that. And something that I feel personally that the Democratic Party unfortunately has gotten a little bit away from is focusing on people in those roles and how those people are taken care of, especially considering everything that's coming around the bend, not even coming around the bend, but it's happening with AI and how other traditional jobs are starting to become less and less. So I think that something needs to be focused on in regards to the trades, and that should be a focus of the Democratic Party, both parties. But the Democratic Party was traditionally the party that focused on that, and it just seems like it just has kind of taken a back seat. And I'm just curious your thoughts, being a younger guy, and then obviously with, your dad, like what are your feelings on focusing on the trades and putting that back to the forefront of the party?
No, I agree. The trade union, and not only the trade union, but generally labor, particularly, needs to be at the forefront of our policies right now, particularly in the Democratic Party. I would
Why?
always tell,
Not really quick. Why?
yeah,
I don't mean to cut you off, but
oh,
like,
absolutely.
obviously because of the the family stuff. But like, is it frustrating to you that the Democrats have kind of like almost forgotten about it in a way? Like,
Not
and
even
is this
forgot about it. Has been actively, if you really think of it, they've been actively fighting against labor since, probably since people say the '70s, but I like to point it at Bill Clinton mostly with NAFTA and the opening of China,
yeah?
particularly. But what to kind of answer your question, like why is it important? The working class, and particularly labor, is the quickest way for Americans to enter the middle class. I wouldn't be here right now if my dad's union didn't provide me with excellent health care, a stable job, and even my stepdad's health care didn't provide a stable job for us. And that's incredible. There's people who My stepdad
Right.
doesn't have a college degree. My dad does have a college degree, but he decided to go into the trades regardless. And he's made a great middle. They've all made a great middle class living because of that. And that's an opportunity that Americans should have access to. But it's becoming difficult because unions have been systematically torn apart. And in America, I don't know. I really know you got one person viewing right now, but an important case, Supreme Court case, we got to look up is the Janus decision, which
Okay.
really destroyed a lot of the unions because it created the right to work, which allowed a lot of workers to just completely opt out of the union if they decide to and not pay union dues. And what you end up doing is you get a really sharp decline in labor union membership amongst laborers, but then you get the large macro trend of labor in general decreasing at a steady rate since the 70s and then really crashing in the 90s because a lot of these factories they all moved out. The fact like the Ford factories, everything has really started to move out into these different countries, and now Americans, particularly in the Rust Belt, but also in Stafford, particularly as well, and all these working class mill towns in Putnam, they've all got left with a rotten deal. There's no, they've had to develop and redevelop these industries, and it's really important for us to really look at this and like look there's a way that we could say, oh, just look at this, but I actually have ideas in order to do this, and that's important. Particularly a couple of the policies that I'm really trying to push for is that we need to make it easy for people to join unions and to give unions much more power in collective bargaining, making unions a much more attractive job, particularly because what you need to have union dues be eligible for tax credits or for some kind of reimbursement by the state so that we reduce that barrier so people don't say, oh, I'm not going to join the union because, it costs a little bit for my paycheck to go and join the union. And the second thing is we need to empower striking workers. There was a bill that the governor recently vetoed last legislative session that would have provided a striking workers fund, which I am in favor of creating a striking workers fund, providing striking workers with unemployment, because
Okay.
what we need to do right now is we need to empower these workers and we need to empower unions because they're the backbone of the middle class. They are the backbone of our society. They're the reason why our store shelves are shelved. They're the reason why the lights are on, why you and me are wearing, what we're wearing right now. That all happened because good Americans good Americans are working every day and pouring their heart out to do this, and the government in return is giving them nothing. Very particularly very recently, and so that's one of the biggest things I'm pushing for. But then also, we need to get people into the labor industry, period, because we have a bit of a shortage of a lot of laborers in this particular area. And
Yeah.
so, what does this mean? I'm in favor of universal funding for trade schools, and I'm also for universal funding for certificate programs, particularly for educators who are also in unions, so that we get more people into these fields that are essential for keeping America running. And I see I have comments here that I'm just going to read real quick to make sure. Is one of the most declining
Yeah,
trades with
Sage.
intensity of work.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Sage. Ditto that with construction. Like, we need more people into these industries, and not we need to protect. And when those people are in that industry, we need to protect them, and we need to tell them that yes, we need to empower them and tell them yes, you do have a voice, not only in politics, which is what I hope to be for workers, but also in the workplace, so that they don't get taken advantage of by employers, and so that these workers are able to have a stable living that I had the lucky chance to be able to live because of what unions provided to me and my family.
Absolutely. So while I've been doing this, I've actually been, yeah, I shared the screen. I wanted to look up the thing you mentioned in regards to there was the Janus versus, I think that was the one,
Yeah, that was the
AFSCM.
one. I gave it a quick
Yep.
look.
Yep. Yep. I was just trying to bring that up in case anybody else besides Sage was watching. And then there's this one. Just to kind of hammer the point home, and that was a great point by Sage. Um, I love Sage. He's one of the smartest guys I know. I've learned a lot from him because he is spot on. And let's see here. Yeah, there it is. Yep.
Yeah.
5 decades of decline, U.S. construction sector productivity. Yeah, it's been happening for 50 years. And it's like you wonder, it's like, man, you wonder why the infrastructure looks the way it does in this country and why everything seems to be falling apart. It's like, it's why, here's another thing. This brings up a point for me, um, is the fact that, one of my frustrations, I was a former Democrat. I'm an independent now. And it goes to and also it goes to like what I experienced growing up and the type of work my dad did. He was an iron worker. He was a builder. He built bridges, and the fact that like so many people, young guys, don't want to use their hands as much as they used to, and like they get into jobs that like don't pay them well. They accrue student loan debt that's just astronomical. I mean, I felt that myself. It's astronomical. It's crazy, and people are drowning in debt uh, before they can even buy a house. Like, you
If they
wouldn't
can
give
buy
like
a house.
right. It's just like yeah. It's like you got young kids that wouldn't even be approved to take out that mortgage and before they even truly understand money, getting degrees in things that don't really teach you how things actually work and how things are built. And then you just hope that maybe you pay it off. Whereas instead, yeah, you could go into the trades and be good to go. And you've got a skill that isn't basically protected and isn't going anywhere. And it's too bad. And I'm really hoping, and that's why I brought this up, was that we get the younger generation really refocusing on the trades and we start to build again, you know? Uh, and I want to jump in here just really quick. We got Sage spouting off again. Uh, in my opinion, it's a trend. Having your associate's degree used to be the goal. Now it's your bachelor's and going to school for IT. The market will be too flooded and no one will be left to do plumbing, electrical, ironwork, etc. Yeah.
Yeah. No, he's right. And when there was this mass stigmatization of joining a trade, which is ridiculous. Like they make great money, and what we need to do right now is we need to be conduits and voices and say, yes, we need more workers. We need people who want to join labor. And again, you need to echo the two. We need to echo the two things. We need to lower the barrier access for people to join trades, and we need to protect the people once they're in the trade so that they're able to make money and they're able to have a living. And look, ditto all those points. And really quickly on construction, I mean, we could probably have a whole another 2 hours, like a whole 2 hours of conversation, particularly about why it's difficult to build in America anymore. And I think this is an
Mhm.
important part here. I mean, I can say my own things about the restrictions and red tape, particularly involving environment, particularly involving different property lands and everything. But it's you end up with in Stafford, which is crazy, crazy, crazy to me. I think it cost them a couple $1,000s to put in a ramp that somebody and Bill was talking to me about it. He was like, "Yeah, I was having a conversation with people. They would like if for anyone else, it would have been give me $20 and I'll get that ramp done for you in 2 hours." And nowadays, just for building a ramp for accessibility to town hall, it's costing thousands of
Yes.
dollars in order to do that anymore because in Hartford, it seems that the goal is we want to spend more money on lawyers than we actually want to do on construction and building and growing our infrastructure. And that's not only in Hartford, that's federally in every state. It's a nightmare. When in reality, the goal should be we should be spending more money on raw materials and construction and building things that really help people and not take 20 years to build and then you end up with things like the Big Dig, and that
Yes.
costs a shit ton of money, or the high speed transit in California, which I don't think it's connecting two towns yet. That was supposed to be done like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
It's I can't even put how grossly over budget that high speed railway has been, and how much money California has sunk into this, and federally the money that was sunken into that. And for what? We have nothing to
Yeah.
show for this. While everyone around the world is improving their infrastructure, we're stuck in the Stone Ages because our politicians can't get out of their own way.
Yeah. Boy, you said a lot of stuff there, man, that's got me thinking a lot of different directions. And again, this is like, even like, again, for me, it's like, and this is why I think it's so important, the idea of getting younger. Like, as long as we got this two-party system, it's the way it works. It just is what it is. And the best thing you can do is get as many good young people as possible, willing to work with each other. Like, if you got disagreements, okay. And I think that goes a long way into solving the issues we have in regards to getting things done. And I get it. I understand why people are frustrated, like, for better or worse. And this is the trick. The Democratic Party is considered the party of the government. And it's frustrating because you look at it and you see all that governmental red tape, and people wonder, this is why. And, like, I have to mention it. This is why somebody like Trump was as attractive as he was when he was running. And I get it. It's just like, he was a business guy. He's a business guy that, like, talks about, like, he was a builder basically, that uh, knew how to kind of navigate that red tape. And then I can see why people, that's appealing to people, because people are just tired of seeing where they live stagnate and nothing happened. And it's just, that's why, like, for better or worse, it's why I think, like, somebody like him, or and then and others, like, it's interesting, like, I can look at somebody like Trump and understand what the appeal, 100%. For me, I'll be the first to admit, I was a big Bernie Sanders guy, and he was somebody that was in the system just trying to get things done and get around that red tape. And I've got a funky kind of politics too, because, like, kind of as it stands, in a way, like, I was actually a big Bobby Kennedy supporter this past go around. And because I listened to him talk about things in regards to how we bridge the divide, how we talk to one another, and how you basically kind of cut all that red tape and get in there and make things more streamlined. Like, I get the idea of Doge, like, trying to make things more accountable. It's just people are tired of it, and people are just tired of seeing things not happen. So I just think there's so much going on right now that needs to be looked at, and that's why I think it's important that people just start talking again,
Yes,
just like
yes,
talking again.
yeah,
Um, so, uh, well, go ahead, man. I'm sorry, because I was looking at some of the Sage is saying a few more things as well, but
yeah.
go
I
ahead
was
if you
looking, I
wanted
was
to.
looking at some of the things Sage says, and like, look, ditto the points on everything said. If to those people who say that, like, oh, Republicans and Democrats can't talk about anything, you check the comment section. It's we're
Absolutely.
we're really hitting the points here, and like, Sage and I might disagree, particularly on a lot of on social policy, a couple of things here and there, but quite frankly, everybody in this chat room and everybody in this room right now, we want what's best for our community, and we want what's best for the people around us. And we might have disagreements on how those go, but when we have a federal government that is so, and this is dating back many years. I'm not even just particularly talking about Trump.
Absolutely.
Many years, that is just
Absolutely. Of
inept
course.
and slow
Yes.
and
Yes.
unresponsive to the people. And I really want to tie this back into the fact that I'm running for state rep and not, and
Of
I'm
course.
not running on
Yeah, but
federal. But
I
like,
get it.
no, no, no,
That's all I wanted.
but like
Yeah.
tying it back in, it's like,
Yeah.
this is why it's so important to have a state that's very responsive, and a state
Yes.
that's that is able to provide things that the federal government is failing to provide us, because it doesn't react quick enough to the things that people need. And there's something to be said that we don't want things to run too quickly. There was, and last year particularly, the Democrats rammed through a budget without going through a lot of the normal structures. I believe this If I remember
Yeah.
correctly, this was for some of the emergency funding cuts that actually Doge ended up doing, particularly, is that once you start slashing too quickly, then you run into issues. Particularly with Doge, you got to be careful with something like Doge because in the in a vacuum, it'd be good to like cut out whatever fat there is. But when you're cutting out important things that people need, then that becomes a bit of an
Yes.
issue. Geez, there was a number that's out there. I'm just missing on the tip of my tongue about how many people have died of HIV and AIDS in the world because we cut out aid. And I know some people, particularly watching this, might be like, "Oh, who cares about what happens outside our borders?" Which I would say it's important for us to care about what happens outside our borders because then we end up into wars like we are in Iran right now.
Yes.
But anyway, it's just kind of section 1A of just like policy affects people.
Yes.
And when we kind of look at this as a game,
Right.
people get hurt. And that's something that I think a lot of politicians lose. They are detached from reality. They're detached from how their actions and what their actions will affect the people that they represent, but also the people in the country. Because although I'm representing a district, I'm also a U.S. citizen. I'm also a Connecticut citizen. I want to make sure that what I'm doing isn't going to hurt the state or my country either, because it's important for people to be grounded and understand where their policies are coming from. And I think that is
Yeah.
lacking.
Yeah. And it's true. I mean, like, because we can go into the bigger stuff as well. It does all connect. Everything does connect. And, I'm personally a big believer in the idea that, yeah, everyone, yeah, it's true. I mean, leadership starts at the top. Sure, I guess you could say that, but at the same time, I think at the same like on the local level, that's the foundational level. There's no reason that like you can't set the tone locally and help things change nationally. And we're in a time now too. It's just like look at what we're doing. Like there wasn't these tools before. Like I think these are the important things about technology where now we can actually talk more conveniently. I'm also a big believer. It's just like you use these tools conveniently for people that don't have the time to get out there and actually go to an event, but opening up time hopefully so people can get out there in the real world again and start getting involved and start building again and start building their communities again and being a part of the process again, giving them an understanding so that when they go to a meeting or they want to be involved, they feel fully informed as possible. It's one of the things in Stafford. It's you got so many brilliant people in Stafford that have so many good ideas. It's just they don't know how to get it out there. You go online, cool, all well and good. You get into some comment sections, awesome, good for you. If it helps you get it out there, if it helps you feel comfortable with it, sure. I've done that myself. But the best thing you can do is get as informed as possible. There's so much information, and then just get out there and start building again. And I think that's how we make everything better. I mean, what do you think? How do you think we start using these tools, all this technology, and finally start getting disciplined with it so we can actually change things?
Yes. So I want to say Sage's comment. Also, the best thing to do is to move out of the comment section. And look,
Yeah,
I think social media can play a good role in
yeah,
busting through there's a great word out there, but it's you can break through a lot of things through social media, but that's like you're shooting in the dark in this instance. What you really need to do is join your town committee, Republican,
yes,
Democratic town committee. Start there.
yep,
There's a lot of people who think like you. There's a lot of people who are politically inclined like you, and they're politically inclined, but also like they work. They're neighbors, and it's a place where you can all collectively talk about things, but not only talk about
sure,
things, make actual change in your community. Um, Particularly my Democratic town community. On the 21st, they're having a soup supper. The attendance of that soup supper is about 100 to 150 people, where you're able to go, you're able to talk to people in your community, and once you get that, you get a grassroots organization. That's when
yeah,
that's where real movements start. They don't start They don't start online. They start with individuals, and those individuals grow into groups, and those groups become movements. And that's what really needs to happen, and particularly for young people. And I don't think young people really understand this because I didn't really understand this. To kind of get a kind of general sense of how I really got into this, because I know we really didn't talk about this. I was doing counterterrorism research in Jordan,
Hmm.
when yeah, when Trump won the election in
Hmm.
2024, and
Okay.
I remember just kind of sitting there and being like, I am unsatisfied with how things are going right now, and I'm sure Shage had a completely different reaction to Trump winning, but at the very that's particularly what activated me past the I'm politically interested and into the I want to be politically active. And so when that happened, I'm like, where do I go? What do I need to do? And that's where I just looked, and there's this thing called a Democratic Town Committee, and Republicans have it too. I just emailed the chair, and they were so excited to get me involved, to get me to meetings. And when I did, it's great. People talk with you. It's a great way to build community. I started working their social media for Woodstock, and then after I was doing Woodstock, I was excuse me, the social media chair for the entire 35th Senate district. And that got me connected into a lot of individuals in different small towns, Ashburn, Vernon, everywhere. And once you get that kind of communication, then real things can happen and you get real movements. And I think particularly for the Democrats, we were able to really organize ourselves together and really have a good local election race. And I think getting our stuff together and having real competent DTCs that are well attended is a great start to that because everything starts local. Tip O'Neill. Local politics is politics. And once I did social media, that's when I really became interested in this seat. And really looking at how Kurt Vale and everyone, and how state reps really affect me as an individual, me and my family as an individual, and that really motivated me to go run in this race. And so when the seat ended up opening up, I was really excited when people were telling me that I should really go for the seat, and so that's how I'm here now. If that's the case.
Uh, um. Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely, man. I do agree with you, and I think, yeah, I mean, just yeah, social media is a good platform. There are good platforms to get started off of and whatnot, but it's ultimately getting back out in the real world and getting comfortable being around people and just getting things done. So, um, and I was curious. This is where, like, I'm trying to segue as best as I can here because I have my next thought like ready as well, but I wanted to follow up on what you were saying. Now, before I let you go, like, I wanted to talk a little bit about education. Now, we talked about the trades and what have you, but I think we I feel like there needs to be things done in regards to education, like exploring new ways to do things and what have you. Do you have any specific ideas in regards to education? Sage just mentioned right out of the gate, and I was kind of curious as well because it's something I've opened my mind up a little bit too over the past several years through conversations I've had with people that have done it. But I mean, what's your opinion on homeschooling? And like, what's your just opinion on education overall, and what things that we might need to adjust, like moving forward with the next generation?
No, and I think you and me were talking about particularly with a more emphasis on working class and being like, look, you don't just have to go to high school. You can go to trade school. And there's a lot of great places to go there. So I think that's the first thing that we need to do. And particularly I want to hit on homeschooling really, really quick.
Okay.
I think I think particularly this is my kind of ethos about everything is I'm a big proponent of public schooling. And that when we have alternative schooling historically, you weaken public schools, and what you end up doing is you have a plethora of bad choices because the public schools aren't getting funded, or you have a two-tiered system of schooling where the people going to these schools are only able to access that because of their wealth. And someone like me wouldn't be able to be here today if I didn't have access to a great school system. And I mean, full disclosure here, like I went to the Woodstock Academy, and that's a really confusing school system to
Is
explain
it?
because it's my
Okay.
public school. Like there's no other school out there, but
Right.
also it's not completely public either. It's
Right.
semi-private. And
It's
so
interesting. Go ahead.
it's really interesting. And to be totally honest, I would rather every school system be like the Woodstock Academy in this instance, but
Yeah.
I don't really know the feasibility of that. For homeschooling particularly, my biggest thing is that you should have a right to go to homeschool, and that you should have that option. You shouldn't be taking that away. And there's a lot of Democrats who are out there trying to completely slash and burn it because heaven forbid a more religious household per se wants to teach their kids in a more religious setting, or for whatever reason you want to do homeschooling,
More
you can
family oriented.
you do homeschool, whatever your family decides. But we also got to make sure that you're not getting the bad you're not getting bad apples, and this should be something that the homeschooling community should be fighting for as well, because it's the bad stories that end up making headlines. And once you get enough bad stories, then people start coming after homeschooling, which is just like which shouldn't be the case. But we got to make sure that there's some kind of accountability to make sure that those bad situations don't make the headlines. And well, not only don't make the headlines, that's a crazy, like, don't happen at all. People should have access to a good education, whether they're homeschooled or whether they go to or they go to public school. But my biggest thing is that we need more funding for public schools, particularly for teachers. And I really want to touch base on this.
Yeah, I agree.
Public school teachers aren't paid enough. They're not paid enough.
Absolutely.
We need more.
Yep.
We need more people going into public school teaching. A lot of my biggest mentors were were my teachers. And when that option is not necessarily top of mind for what people want to do with their life, even people who are inclined to be like, look, I want to serve my community, I want to give back, we need to provide more funding for teachers, more funding for public schools. And we also need to, I talked about this briefly, we need to reduce the cost of that certificate program. And I'm really in favor of universal funding for certificate programs for people who graduate, but because they're straddled with so much debt, as we talked about already, sometimes that cost barrier is a really high barrier for people, particularly in my generation, who are going to be the most indebted generation in human history because of this, because of the cost of college. So we need to make it easier for people to go into fields, not only in labor but also in education, and particularly in psychological help and therapy and social
Yeah.
service.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Like, cause that actually, that really ties in a lot to like everything I think that's gone on technologically. Interestingly enough, it's like, when you mention things like, psychology and getting people into those type of fields. Yeah. Cause we haven't even come close to figuring out the effects that all this, like, all of this technology has had, because everything has happened so quickly. And that's going back to a point that I had made in regards to, um, the idea that, like, I really like, I think that my generation, your generation, millennials and younger really need to take the ball and run with it in regards to finally getting disciplined with all this technology and figuring out how it can best work, how it can work with with schooling and what have you. I mean, um, and how it's going to change things as well. I mean, you've got things like AI that's changing everything, obviously, and it's going to change how we teach things. I want to get into something that Sage just asked here in a second. Um, and not lose my train of thought on what I was trying to say. Um, but yeah, going back to the thing about like homeschooling as well, that's something I've opened my mind up to as well, because I've seen a lot of wonderful kids coming out of homeschooling, and I agree with what you're saying as well. There, it's tricky because, yeah, there's always going to be bad examples of things. I don't think you can ever get rid of that. All you can do is learn from those examples and try to make things better and just remain open-minded. You don't want it to take away from things. I think that, we need to look at the way we teach our kids in the public school system a little bit more. Like, we don't want to overload the system, because yes, absolutely, the teachers deserve to be paid more, 100%. Because you got a teacher that's doing well for themselves, they're coming in, they feel better about their lives, and then they can focus on what they're passionate about, which is kids, and also not giving them classroom sizes that are unmanageable, and then not giving them any wiggle room with their own curriculum, and they just got to follow everything in regards to standardized testing and whatnot. I feel like in a way that that's going to really open up kids' minds as well. We got to stop training kids like worker ants and just throwing them into the
No,
world
I
and what
agree.
have you. Kids got to think creatively again. That's something I always struggled with. It's just like, good for the kids that could always sit down and take a test and nail it. It's like I think, but I still think most want to be creative and feel like they're coming up with something new.
Yeah.
And so it's like I think there's so much to be discussed in regards to
Yeah.
education, and
Look,
I think
yeah, you're preaching to
go
the
ahead.
choir, Greg. I'm sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt, but like
No, go ahead. Yeah,
you're,
it's you,
talk,
man.
you're talking to a liberal arts student. Like what you're describing is the liberal arts philosophy of education, and that should be applied to our schools, our high schools, our middle schools, our elementary schools. We need we need to be less rigid in our requirements, particularly for teachers, and to have a more
Yeah.
open curriculum, more creative curriculum, because quite frankly, what works for one school and for one student is not going to work for everybody. And I really just want to tie this into the kind of funding question that that Gabe posed in terms of like how can we justify, why should we justify a higher more taxes? And I guess my first response is that we all right first response is that we're running a surplus, and quite frankly, the way I view it is that the state shouldn't be taking this much money out of their citizens unless they're planning on using it. Like, sure, I get the justification of a rainy day fund. Like, great, have a rainy day fund. I'm glad that my state is financially responsible. Let's use some of that in things that we find important, that we think is an investment, because
Yes.
it's not just like, oh, we're just throwing money into a pit. Every
Yes.
dollar that we spend on education, we're getting those dollars back tenfold, because we're making smarter people who are going to come back to our communities and provide us with economic 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 incentive, and not economic incentives, but like more money. Whatever. I'm losing my train of thought here, and I'm sorry that wasn't said
No, I
eloquently.
know. I can see your,
But generally speaking, and then like kind of on the taxes thing, we need to look particularly at, yeah, return on your investment. Thank you. Oh,
there you
someone's a business major, I guess. Here, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what Gabe's major here is, but we we are getting a return on our investment when we invest in education. And I think we shouldn't raise a penny in taxes, particularly in this kind of district, working class districts. Those should be paid for by adjusting adjusting our tax bracket to effectively represent the extremely wealthy individuals in our in the state, so that it doesn't fall on working class people like my
Yeah.
family to
Yeah.
flip the bill for education when there's plenty of resources out there. And we also need to reduce the money that we spend on these red tape measures that we've all been talking about, because when we do that, we're gonna have a lot of money extra, and we're gonna be able to spend it on things that are important, particularly education. And so I guess the simple answer to Gabe's question here is that taxes should not be raised on individuals, on working class and middle class individuals, if this policy needs a tax increase. But I really don't think this will require any new taxes if we just did the things that I've been talking about, particularly with the
Rainy day
particularly with
fund.
the budget, and particularly with the red tape measures.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if the money's there and it's available, we should try to figure out what we're going to do with it. And I think that's what people worry about. It's just like, they see their money that they paid their taxes towards, and they just see it kind of sitting there. There's like, well, is it really just sitting there? What's going on with it? And then they see nothing happen. And so absolutely. Is that's something you think you would definitely try to like push it away? That if there's stuff that you for the district, like try to tap into that rainy day fund and see if there's any way
Yeah,
to, yep.
I would tap into it, and I'd also take a look and make sure that the government needs to be more efficient. And when we pass things, we need the people living in our state to feel the things that we are passing because it's good stuff. But
Yeah,
when you have barriers because of slow implementation, because it takes forever for us to find a contractor who fits the rigid gender and racial requirements that we that we require our contractors to do, and we're not going to the lowest bidder all the time.
is that
When
true?
it's true, particularly for federally. I'm sure I'm sure it's pretty similar to the state, and I'll look particularly more into it. But there's all these stopgaps that make it ridiculously untenable for us to go and do things and build things and implement policy. And that's honestly one of the biggest issues that I think really face our society today. Because a lot of Democrats, particularly, have these big ideas that are great. But if you're just going to be caught in this middle ground where it's like, great, you passed, the Build Back Better plan, but then nobody sees it for 10 years or nobody sees it at all because there's no rollout and no implementation because the grants that you provide are difficult to apply to, or the standards that you have to provide to towns where these towns have to go and make sure that they have like 7 auditors out there trying to look what they're doing. It's just ridiculous. Oh yeah, right here.
Like I said, terrible at segueing, so just bear with me. But yeah, I just noticed that Sage had said something here. He said the state of Connecticut makes you receive bids from at least 3 minority-owned businesses, regardless of job experience before you complete a job, or they fine you 25% the contract price you bidded. I know this from personal experience because I failed the audit. And that is true. It's one of those things that it's such a and it's so tricky to talk about. And so I really give you a lot of credit for being willing to talk about that, especially since yeah, a lot of times it's tricky within the Democratic Party to talk about these things, but they're important because it's not like it's saying anything in regards that like people shouldn't have opportunities, but at the same time it should be looked at in a way if it's okay if it's slowing down the process and it's making things harder for people and it's creating frustration for people like somebody like Sage who does this type of work and what have you, and he just wants to get his job done and he wants to do a good job. It makes it so unbelievably frustrating, and it's the kind of stuff that makes a lot of people very, very angry unnecessarily.
Yeah, and not only that, a lot of these projects that we're rolling out are particularly affecting communities of color in a very positive way if they're being implemented. And so when we keep getting in our way about things, what's really being hurt is the communities that we are supposedly trying to protect with these policies. When in reality, what we should be doing is we should be rolling out the policies that we say we're going to be rolling out. And when we do that, you're going to see an excellent progression in particularly people who are facing civil liberties issues, people of color, people in the LGBTQ community. I can go on and on, immigrants, period. Just the whole 9 yards. The best way for the Democrats to secure their vision for a more equitable world and a more equitable society is by taking the policy that they've already passed and making sure the policy is being actually implemented. Do you know
Yeah.
how beneficial it would be to have a high-speed rail going between all of these communities,
Yeah.
like in California, particularly speaking, like all these communities who are majority people of color communities, so that you're able to get jobs everywhere in the state of California, but they couldn't do that because of all these red tape issues.
I even think about it like with Stafford as well. Like when you look at things like historically of the area, I mean how wonderful would it be if like you had high street rail that came all the way through? We've got our old train station, our old train tracks, and like repurposing them like for a high speed rail system. And it'd be wonderful. And like it's the kind of thing that makes things explode economically. But then there's the things that make it difficult as well because at the same time, and this is where it gets back to obviously the local level, because some people are very, they just want to keep their taxes low and they want to keep things, as similar as close to the way they are as possible
Oh
because they
yeah.
don't want to lose what makes the community what it is, and that's completely understandable.
Three of
But
the
then,
four of my towns think that way. Three of the four of the towns I'm running for really think that way. Like, look, I'm not looking to build a high rise in Woodstock. You know, that's not what my community wants. That's Stafford wants industry to come in. Real, they want to grow. They're and you know the way I see this is going to be is there's two approaches to this. For those towns that want to build and who want to grow and who want to attract businesses, we need to make that as easy as possible for them. And for the towns who want to stay rural, stay kind of preserve their town qualities, which is also important. I'm an environmentalist. I want to make sure that we have access to green spaces in the area, and those communities are important. And not just in a we should respect those communities, but also like in a more policy oriented way, we should respect those communities. But for those communities, what we need to do is we need to keep those taxes low, and we need to make sure they're not forced to make any decisions. And that goes back to grant funding and unfunded mandates, and reducing the burden placed on the residents of those towns, and making the cost of living there affordable, so families stay there. And what you don't end up doing is that the working class families that live there and who've grown up all their life have to move out, and then here comes these West Coast, East Coast billionaires coming and swiping up all the property and like completely changing the neighborhood. You know what I mean?
yeah, absolutely. And I'll make a point about that, and we'll wrap up relatively soon, but I don't want to rush it because you had mentioned the idea of people coming in with money, and it's one of the things that I like. In 2020, there was a lot of that happening, where like Stafford, where there was people coming in and they were buying up properties that were pennies on the dollar, and beautiful properties, and they were city people that wanted to just come and live in a quieter setting because of everything that had happened with COVID and the city life, because then a lot of them could go online and work online instead, and they made a lot of money doing that. And that's the tricky thing. And this, for me personally, I've lived in and out of Boston for years, and I've seen what gentrification looks like firsthand. It's weird. I don't think I ever thought I'd see it with where I grew up. But like seeing like it kind of happen in a strange way. I mean, I lived in South Boston. I lived in Roxbury, and I saw those things happening there. And then coming home to Connecticut, on and off for the past several years, going back to 2020, seeing those things happen and seeing people get priced out. And that's one of the big things recently locally, with like things like home revaluations. It's like it's all well and good. It could be a wonderful thing if you're planning on selling, and then like all of a sudden things go up. But how do people stay and continue to pay their taxes and afford it? I mean, it's tough for me personally because I've gotten so used to how crazy rent is. So I come back home to Stafford, and like rents actually feels affordable in a way to me, which is crazy. But it's not affordable to everybody, and they're just gonna find solutions and shouldn't be forcing people out that have always lived here and just want to live out the rest of their lives here, which is it's tough, it's frustrating, but this is why people need to come together and try to find good solutions. So uh,
It's good for people to move in. Like it's good when
it
people move.
is.
The issue lies in if people are moving in because the people already living here are being forced out.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunately the reality that we're living in, as you expertly pointed out and illustrated. Because like as I said, we need to reduce property taxes in these small rural towns. And I think that'll be a big help in cost over there. But generally speaking, it's a tough thing to solve. And the best thing that you can do is to try to keep costs low and to make sure those home evaluations are not spiked too high. Like every eval should be capped at a certain maximum, that
Hmm.
and so that people's property taxes are not just going to skyrocket every time that
Right.
they're that you know that the property's coming up for a reevaluation.
Yeah. And that's the way those things slide too, because people get so busy with their lives and just trying to get by. and then all those they feel like these things kind of sneak up on them and they weren't ready for it, and all of a sudden they're looking at things and they're like, how do I manage? It's been hard enough. Yeah, I think that's really what honestly like COVID in 2020 really emphasized and well highlighted, just like everything that's been going on for so long, the wealth and income inequality. I mean, Connecticut itself, I mean, I don't know if it still is, but I'm pretty sure it's at least close to the top,
It's pretty
has
close.
the highest wealth and income inequality per capita in the country. And that was one of the things like, that I liked about, like that Bill talks about in Stafford was just like, the idea of Stafford, not Stanford. Oh, and it's like I really think Connecticut needs to have that mindset overall.
No, I agree. We need to, and we also need to understand that there's massive wealth inequality within our district as well. Like
Yeah, no, Summers is crazy.
yeah, some people look at the district and they'll be like, what do you mean you guys are middle income? Like, look, like you guys are making such and such. But even on an individual town base, like there's a lot of wealthy people living in a lot of these towns, but there's also a lot of people who are not so wealthy living in these towns, and it's those people who are the most hurt in
Yeah,
terms of property tax because it's a regressive tax system. The property tax, it's a flat tax.
yeah,
So in simple terms, that means if you have less money, your taxes are going up a disproportionately large amount compared to someone else. And we actually did a great Ivar McDonald, shout out to him. He's our DTC chair in Woodstock, did a study and he found that home values for low income and middle income houses increased more
mm,
than upper income level
mm,
housing. And
mm.
it just goes to show that like it's extremely hard to live middle class in America. It's extremely hard to live working class and poor in America right now because of these wealth inequalities. And as someone running and someone who's young and someone who sees this, it's something that I want to be a force for good in, and I know I won't be able to fix everything, but at the very least I want to be I want to be shouting out the rooftops to make sure that everyone knows this is an issue and that there's ways in which we can try to solve them.
Absolutely, man. A lot of challenges ahead, and yeah, that's it's just it makes me very hopeful. Whether people like you, like people like Sage, like it's just you like it's really nice for me personally, and then we'll end it up here. I just wanted to say this. It's it gives me a lot of hope. I mean, I'm at this point I'm an older millennial, in my early 40s and what have you, and it's really cool seeing like people, that are younger coming into the world and really trying to kind of get us how do they say it? Like get some skin in the game and like try to make some change. It's makes me feel good about things. It gives me a lot of hope and optimism, and I'm just, I'm grateful. I'm very grateful for you. I'm very grateful for people like Sage and just seeing like people in like the community stepping up and doing these things. So I appreciate this, and I appreciate you, Vincent, being willing to, talk to us. Sage here from a distance, just as his voice recovers. And yeah, just spending the time that you did. So I guess last thing we'll do is anything else you have to say, closing statements, I guess, and just,
And I guess
yeah,
I know we haven't talked much about like the race, but I just want to
yeah,
really bring back home that
yep,
the status quo is unattainable. We cannot keep the status quo right now. We need change. We need someone who is able to go to Hartford to bang down the doors and to make sure that your voices are being heard, particularly in rural communities. There's this great story that Pat Boyd has in which who represents the other half of Woodstock. He reminisces about this the chair in which he sits and waits in the outside the governor's office every single day during the legislative session, and he fights for his community and he fights for his constituents, and he gets a lot of stuff done. He gets a lot of things in bills, and he gets a lot of grant funding to his community, and that's great. We need more people like Pat Boyd, and as someone who really admires his work, I want to be that. I want to be that too. And I want to let you know that if you elect me, I'll be in that chair as well with Pat Boyd, making sure that people in our district are heard and are not ignored. Because right now I feel like a lot of our district is being ignored, and that's for a lot of reasons, particularly our representation, I feel like, but also because, it's easy to ignore rural towns. And I think it's really essential that we need to make sure that we say, like, no, you can't ignore rural towns. You can't ignore working class towns. They're important for our community. They keep us fed. They keep the lights on. They keep the store shelves shelved. It's important. And as someone who's running, that's kind of my core tenet. That is my core tenet. And that's where I want to go. And if you elect me, that's the kind of person I will be. That's the kind of representative I'll be.
That's good, man. Well, like I said, I really appreciate it, and look forward to seeing what you're doing going forward, seeing the events that you got coming up, and yeah, seeing you get out there knocking some doors, have some good conversations. And I really appreciate the one tonight, man. This was good. Hopefully, I was good enough to
You were
ask some
great.
good questions. Yeah, hopefully, I asked some good questions, and hopefully, this is a good kickoff for your campaign, and it's just full steam ahead.
Excellent. And thank you for having me, Greg. I'm always welcome to come back for your podcasts. You're a great moderator. And Sage, if you want to run this once your voice is back, I'm completely down to run it. And if Kurt or anybody else wants to talk or have a roundtable, I'm always down to chat. This has been great.
Hey, hey, that would be awesome. And Sage says, "Thank you, Vincent. I'll be back for conversation, my friend."
Good
You
to
made
hear.
it. There it is, man. You made a new friend across the aisle, and
This
that's
is
a
great.
great step in the right direction. All right, Vincent. Well, I appreciate you, man, and like I said, I look forward to seeing what you do next.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right,
All
have a
right.
good one,
Hey, take
man.
care.